could buy a house for 80 grand or 50 grand or whatever, right, at the time. And so I got into it that way. But when I started really diving into the mechanics of real estate and wealth and cash flow, I came to the conclusion that that wasn't the best option. And I don't think it's actually the best option for anybody. And so that's how I transitioned from single family homes to apartment buildings and to mobile home parks.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Walter Johnson. Walter's a finance professional and real estate investor and syndicator with 16 plus years of experience serving the real estate and banking industries. Walter, as I mentioned, I really like to let you tell your story. So your bio is interesting. We're going to have a ton to talk about, but I really first want to say thank you for joining the show. Thanks for coming on today. Super excited to get to talk and kind of hear a bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start there. Let's start with your background, kind of what got you to where you are today, and then we'll kind of just have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started off pretty much like every other, I would say, real estate investor, right? You actually want to look at single family homes because that's, in my opinion, the lowest barrier of entry. So you look at that and it's more marketed and stuff. Like, okay, that actually makes sense. And it's cheaper, let's just say, right? You could buy a house for 80 grand or 50 grand or whatever, right? At the time. And so I got into it that way. But when I started really diving into the mechanics of real estate and wealth and cash flow, I came to the conclusion that that wasn't the best option. And I don't think it's actually the best option for anybody. And so that's how I transitioned from single family homes to apartment buildings and to mobile home parks.
Okay.
Yeah. So it kind of can sound, I would say, a little bit hypocritical, but we all got to start somewhere. But if I, knew what I knew now, then I would have took a different route.
Yeah. And I mean, I think your point about sort of that barrier to entry, or at least perceived barrier to entry, is very true. I think, kind of once you get onto the commercial side of things, you realize that maybe the thinking around that barrier to entry might not be exactly what it was, what you kind of thought. And, the numbers are smaller for a single family house versus a 200 unit apartment complex. And so a lot of it comes down to, some mindset and wrapping your head around those numbers. What did you actually invest in single family real estate? Like, did you do the process? Some people, think about it and then say, no, I want to go to commercial, but you did the thing and then, sort of realized, maybe commercial's better.
Oh yeah. So I did the thing. That's why I say, my previous statement was probably a little bit contradictory. I contradicted myself. So I started off with single family homes. I bought land. I bought small apartment buildings. But what I realized is like, this is not enough cash flow. This is not what I was imagining. And then I fixed up homes, fixed them up, sold them. Mm-hmm. And I had a good paying job at the time when I was doing fix ups. I was still making six figures at 20 something years old. But when I started fixing up homes, I didn't replace my job. I just had another job because fixing up homes it's essentially another job. So when you say, hey, I made 60 grand, but it took me 4 months or so, right? Because you have to buy it, you have to rehab it, you have to put it on the market, then somebody has to buy it, and that takes 30 days. So you spread it out about 4 or 5 months. It's like, did you really make money? And then the time that you actually had to, manage contractors and drive and pick out the fixtures, like however you wanted to fix that house, is that did you really actually profit with time and your profits?
Yeah. I think calculating that the cost of your time on those projects and potentially the opportunity cost of putting those resources elsewhere, I think is definitely something to consider. So when did you make the switch to commercial real estate?
I made it. So I was kind of, let's back up a little bit. I think I was like everyone else. You look at commercial real estate, you're like, wow, that's actually a big number. Those are big numbers. And I tried to get into self storages. I would say about '06, '07. But
Hmm.
looking at the self storage, you're like, wow, that's actually $3 million is purchase price, right, to get in. And that's, 20, 30% down. So that was actually a lot to sink in on one property, or you can just buy like, 3 or 4 single family homes, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. But like I mentioned before, if I would have had to do it all over again, I would have just bought a self storage. So I started looking at self storages in '06, '07, but of course we actually had the crash in '08. And then I had a friend of mine, I was still searching, but I had a friend of mine that told me about mobile home parks. And so that's what I started studying. So I would say, um, actually, I even met, I had a person that I was introduced to that owned 28 self storages. So I was really
Hmm.
into self storages as far as learning, but um, I guess, gravitated towards mobile home parks.
What about the mobile home parks kind of pointed you in that direction versus self storage? And I mean, we've had
Mhm.
guests on that invest, their focus is mobile home parks, and other guests the focus is self storage. Some people have done both. What made you kind of lean towards the mobile home parks? What was it about them?
I think I knew more. That's one, but two, I think I did a mailer just to test it out, and I got when I started talking to the sellers, it was more. It, it, it almost fit like I knew what they were talking about, since you have manufactured homes and they have homes in parks. It almost, the conversations almost flowed. I almost got it. I grasped it, I guess, faster than I did with self storages.
Okay, I've heard self storage sort of referred to as more business than real estate, um, and then mobile home parks. I've invested in self storage. I haven't actually been a part of any mobile home parks. It's an interesting asset class to me, but I just haven't gotten there. What do you feel like that is similar, where it's a
Hmm.
business more than real estate? I know there's different ways to operate them. Like, what's your kind of strategy and philosophy around mobile home parks and why you like them?
Yeah, I would say it's more business than real estate. I wouldn't say it's as business than a self storage, because self storage, you still have people, but you have tenants, but you have the storage, versus a home. So you do
Hmm.
have that people kind of residents, their
Yeah.
tenants base still, but it's still a business. You're still looking at it, I would say, pretty similar to a self storage.
Yeah. Do you like to have? I've heard people talk on this, like the difference between park owned homes versus resident owned homes, and how do you like to operate, and maybe why do you think one way or the other?
Yeah, I don't like to own the actual homes, right? Like I mentioned, I own single family homes, and I'm not a huge component of owning the homes and mobile home parks. The reason being, you actually have a lot of expenses. So even if you rent that, let's just say the lot rent is $400, and you're renting out the house as well for another $400, so you're getting $800
Hmm.
total. But you have to manage that. So now you're dealing with the toilets, and now you're dealing with the hot water heaters, and now you're dealing with the
Yeah.
clogged sink, etc. Now with manufactured homes, is that, yeah, you can have a maintenance person come on and fix it, but if it's something bigger, you have to get somebody in, uh, a third party contractor that actually raises your expenses, and not to mention your insurance, and then your coverage. I remember, we actually owned a home before, and the was something it sparked one of the houses. It sparked and caught another house on fire that we owned. Now we didn't own the house, but something happened. They didn't throw a cigarette, but it was something that a fire sparked. So it burned down our house. Of course, we got insurance money for it, but if I, but it was a pain, right? You have to go with the insurance, you have to file a
Yep.
claim, you
Yep.
actually have to, the county inspector has to come. Like it was a pain. And then you actually have this eyesore in your park. So I would rather not deal with homes.
Yeah, and that's generally what I hear anyway. Like I said, I haven't done it myself, but it seems like people like to own the park, but not the homes within it. And
Mhm.
is that is that like readily available? Is that something where you might is that a potential value add play where you would go in and buy a mobile home park that has maybe the homes are also rented out, but you can convert it to a scenario where you've
Mhm.
essentially sold the homes to those owners, or how would you like? I guess I don't know what how most of them are and what the availability of getting to that strategy would be.
Yeah, it's usually a couple options we'll go over. Rent to own. You'll sell the home to them, or you'll give it away, depending on the price. So if there's a home and it's $3,000, or you just you don't want to deal with it, just say, hey, here's a home, but we'll keep the lot rent the same. So let's just say the lot rent was $800. Here's your home, but you're still going to pay $800, and you can give them a discount. So let's just say it's $700 now.
Right, right.
Here's a home, it's $700. Well, you still have your lot rent. You don't have the upkeep and expenses and the
Mhm.
insurance on that home, and someone gets a home. So you look like a hero when you do something like that.
That's a good idea. I guess that's maybe speaks to it's just going to depend on what the value of that home is. If
Hmm.
it's a few $1,000s, that's one thing. And I don't know. I know depending on the market that you're in, those sometimes. I mean, I've seen I there's some mobile home parks around Malibu that are just
Hmm.
like actually very expensive, and the homes look nice. They're just maybe
Hmm.
smaller than other homes in Malibu, but so I know, to some extent, maybe not feasible to just give someone the home, but that I like that strategy though, because essentially, yeah, you're getting a little bit less, but you're completely like eliminating the risk of additional expenses and repairs and things
Right.
based on not owning the home. Um, when so how do you find, like, how are you sourcing deals? What markets do you like? What's your kind of process?
Um. So we have a few. We do mailers. We talk to wholesalers. We don't do a lot of brokers. I think brokers right now. I don't have any problems with brokers, but I think they're just selling for retail, right? And so
Mhm.
they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna sell it at this particular price and see if we can get the most money we can." And so that's what you have. And so we deal with wholesalers. We do direct mail. We have callers that call every single day.
What what markets do you like for this?
We are in the Southwest, the Bible Belt, and we go as well. We go to, I would say, even like Georgia and the Carolinas as well.
Okay, okay. So not, I mean, not, I guess not super different than maybe the markets that people tend to gravitate towards in multifamily and other asset classes. I think that do you still, one of the big things we talk about in selecting markets in
Hmm.
multifamily is always, tenant versus landlord friendly.
Yeah.
What do you Is that something still important in that mobile home
Hmm.
park scenario? And I
Oh yeah.
guess maybe would it depend on if they're park owned homes or resident owned homes, as far
Oh
as, yeah,
yeah,
your
both, and just rents in general. So let's say, for example, there's places in other states to where if you raise the rent $25 because you have to cover your costs and things are just more expensive. We have
yeah.
inflation, and just things are just more expensive, but you get pushback not only from the residents, but the residents would tell the county or the city, and then you actually have pushback. So it's almost like a it makes it harder for operators to actually improve their park because they need the cash to improve their park. with landlord-friendly states, you don't necessarily have that problem. Now, not all landlord-friendly states actually have, they could have some, not I wouldn't say they can have some rent control, but it could be, hey, you only can raise it 10% per year or 15%
Mhm.
per year. So that's actually a benefit.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we talk about rent controls. Sometimes
Mhm.
the allowable increases are fine, I guess. If you want, we try to, a lot of times, when you're underwriting, you might be underwriting at, say, 2 to 4%, maybe 5% in a hot market rental increases. And so if the rent control caps you at 10% annual rental increase or something like that's probably pretty reasonable realistically. Like I think maybe it doesn't allow you to immediately capture a, a, a super hot market like we had a few years back, but at the same time, like from a sustainability standpoint for those tenants, it just not skyrocketing their rent is probably pretty useful for maintaining occupancy. Um, how has we've had a fairly significant shift in the market overall when interest rates went up back in 2022, and we've been in a little bit of at least in the multifamily world, almost like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
stall. How has that been for mobile home? What have you seen in that asset class over the last couple of years?
I mean, rates are 7-8% right now. If you go through a bank with manufactured home, I think right now, I like that. I like that question that you asked. I think right now is still a good buy. So even if you buy at a 9 cap, but your rate is at 7%, and let's say
Mhm.
8%, let's just say 7 because usually it's like 7 something right now. So 7%, but you bought at even 8.5 or a 9 cap, right? So you have that 2% spread. Well, you're making money. Well, majority of the times, a park you can decrease expenses and increase rent, so you can actually turn that 9 cap into a 10 cap. So you're actually still doing okay. You just have to do more work versus before you could just buy at a 10 cap or a 12 cap all day, and your rate would be at 5% or 4%.
Right,
When we had
right.
cheap money,
Yeah.
so it
The
still makes sense.
yeah. I mean, who knows if we'll ever get back there, but the market in general, the real estate market in general, probably doesn't provide for the same uh,
We'll get there.
almost easy cash flow, I guess, if you will, that there was a few years back. But ultimately, it means you have to improve your operations. You have to look
Hmm.
to increase efficiencies, and really dial in and be a great operator. So I think it kind of tends to reset and filter out folks that are not putting the work in on the operational side.
Hmm.
Um, do you is it from a lending standpoint? What types of is it the same lenders you might see in multifamily space? I know
Yeah.
in self storage a lot of times they're SBA loans. Like how's the lending in with the mobile home parks?
Yeah, it's Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. You actually have banks. I would say it's pretty similar to apartment buildings or self storages, and I think that we'll get there with low rates. I mean, if you look at the 2000s, they were in the sevens. If you look at and then we had a refinance boom. I was actually in lending at that time. So if somebody got a rate, they had at 8%, but they could have got a 6.875. They were doing well, right?
Hmm.
I was right around, let's just say like the early 2000s. And then we actually had '08s, and rates were '08 to 2010-ish, 2012. We had rates at 6.5, 7%. That was
Yep.
actually true. Then Obama did the HARP, and then they actually went down. Now we're actually at the same. So we always had these ups and downs, and I think rates, since I think we were calculating rates since the 1700s when they came out, the average rate was always 7%. So we're not too far off from the norm. It just
Yeah.
feels like that because we've actually been
Ever so
spoiled
low.
for years at low rates, but we'll get there again.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a great point. Historically, we have basically normal interest rates right now, and it's just that we had a number of years where it was exceptionally low, which was nice, nice as borrowers to be able to get rates that low. But it's we're still in a very I guess reasonable. I think the first mortgage I ever had was 10 or 11%,
Mhm.
and I was happy to get it. Like that was, I think, in the early 2000s. It was like, oh, great. Um, but yeah, it's something that matters, but it's not ultimately you know, it's maybe not as important as sometimes people
Mhm.
will point it out to be. I think it's not the only thing that matters. Um, Awesome. Well, is mobile homes your main focus? That planning to
Mhm.
stay in that asset class? Don't you don't have anything else that you're thinking from a diversification standpoint, or you just really like that asset class at this point?
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to like diversify in from parks. I just don't think one is that they do really well. Two is that I'm learning a new industry or skill, and how much time and how much effort and manpower that's actually going to take. How about I just stick to this and get really good at one thing,
Yeah.
and then it's easier to actually dominate that industry versus spreading myself out thin.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I think, yeah, just achieving operational excellence on your, sort of in that niche, will really allow for success and growth. And I would imagine that as that grows over time, you're going to be it's going to make deals more accessible. It's going to make increase operational efficiencies, things like that. So I think it makes a ton of sense. Um, yeah, I really love that approach. Walter, let me switch gears. I want to make sure I can ask you the questions I ask each guest, and the first one is just based on the name of the show. It's Know Your Why, and so I always ask every guest, kind of, what is your why? Had a ton of success already. You just mentioned sort of getting uh, really dialing in on that asset class and achieving excellence there. What keeps driving you forward?
I think it's the passion for what I do. I don't. It's like I don't want to do anything else, right? It just don't happen in my blood. If I have work on something, I just work. I work all the time, probably 7 days a week. But the why is so really so when I can have downtime, I can have downtime. When I want to be, if I thought about it, which I'm not, but if I said, hey, I just want to be lazy today or this week, I have
Mhm.
that opportunity. Now I don't take
Yeah,
it, but it's you. I have that in back of my mind.
yeah.
So it's the work to say if I just want to take off today, just take a drive or take a ride or go to a movie or just relax. I can or go visit someone.
Hmm. Yeah. I time freedom is such a
Mhm.
important piece of the equation, I think, for so many people, and um, a lot a lot gets talked about, in terms of there's all these like financial milestones or markers that people use to or define success, and I think ultimately those are all of that is truly just to get to what you're just exactly talking about. It's like, oh, I want to be able to have the option of, oh, I can go to a movie today or whatever, and it's like, and people who have who people have gotten to that point aren't going to just sit around and do nothing because they've reached the point where they consider there's that internal drive of wanting to continue and being passionate about the work, but ultimately just creating optionality, I think, is so important for as the focus.
Yeah, yeah. If you I don't know when it is. I don't think anybody knows when it is, right? But it's the old adage, just take time to smell the roses. But when is that? When is that? Is that when you're 60? Is that tomorrow, or is it can just be today at 3 o'clock? So I want to have that. That's weird. I want to have that. I want to have that option.
Yeah, I that's maybe just define one of life's great mysteries. I mean, what do we? How do you apply that time freedom? When do you apply that time freedom? I think all of that is just so important.
I think it's whenever, I think it's a moving target. It's whenever somebody feels like it, or really, yeah, when just somebody feels like it.
Yeah, yeah. But having it as a focus, as a want, as something that's a part of your vision, and then yeah, it absolutely change. That those things change all the time. So it's might be you might be in a season of I want to travel or I need some extra rest, whatever it is. You might be in a season of I have a project that I need to get across the finish line, and I'm kind of really working through it. So I love it. I love that perspective on time freedom, and it's true. There is no answer, really. There is no answer to that. What's the right time? But ultimately, having that optionality and focus on looking for being able to use the time the way that you want. Walter, when people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch? How should they reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me, my office phone number, 480-674-2035, or Walter at Sonos Capital, SONOS Capital.com.
Okay, perfect. We'll put that in the show notes. I really appreciate you being here today. I think that it's been a great conversation. I think really pretty cool and kind of thought provoking to leave people with that the real question that doesn't have an answer about what time freedom and time use looks like to everyone. So thanks for being here today. Thanks for taking the time out to chat with me.
Yeah, I remember, like it's getting a little bit warm right now in Arizona. I think it hit 90 yesterday, but that's the first day. But besides that, it was probably between 68 and 72 degrees. Perfect weather for the last, let's say, 5 months. Well, there's been days where you go outside, you're doing something, and you're like, you know what? I don't want the weather is so nice. I don't want today to end. So let me actually just go take a drive and just spend like a couple hours just drive and take a look at the neighborhood, or go for a jog or a walk around the park, or just do something to enjoy that nice weather, that sunshine. And I think that's important. You getting the vitamin D, and just everybody's happy because it's a nice day.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. It's just that is to me the single best part of entrepreneurship and real estate and that kind of thing is just that, hey, you know what? It's beautiful out right now, and I just want to be out there in that. I just want to take some time to be out there and enjoy that. And I think it's just a really kind of great space to be in, and know, hey, look, I can come back and work when it's dark out, or when it's too hot to be out there, or whatever the case may be. Like, you have those options, and it's a nice space to be in. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the perspective that you shared. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and being a part of it. I genuinely thankful for having me here.
Sure. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate your time, and let's definitely connect in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, make sure you connect with Walter, check out what he's doing in the mobile home space, and please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get more great guests. As always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?